Alright, in the previous videos we've looked at defining religion as well as defining different types of believers. In this video we're going to take a look at is how these believers access power. The different types of power that believers are going to use to overcome selfishness and evil, as well as death and the cycle of retribution. If you recall from our decision model, we can look at the different types of power that exist during a decision. We can start at that decision node, which the person or the believer is going to choose which path to take, in this case up or down. That's control power. Moving over to the right are going to be the agenda power, or the different amount of branches that exist, and even further to the right, the payoffs of those individual branches. We can also look at what happens before the decision being made, in which an event occurs which then can affect the decision node going forward. So here we're looking at the different types of power that exist. And the reason that believers are going to need power is, as we've discussed, is that selfishness and evil, and as well as retribution or death, are going to have power over us, and therefore the believer is going to need to overcome that power with religious power. And we'll see how that religious power works. If you recall, just very briefly, selfishness primarily works through value power by changing the payoffs of our decisions through those visceral states. Agenda power is going to be where evil is going to primarily operate, as those metaphorical namings are going to change the way we relate to other people, as well as an event that can occur beforehand, such as an act of selfishness from somebody else may lead me to engage in an act of selfishness or an act of evil as I retaliate or seek retribution from them. So these are going to be the different things that believers are going to need to overcome. So let's take a look at where that religious power comes from. If you recall also, not only do we have the types of power, but we have kinds of power. And here we're looking at, again, the three different kinds of power that exists. We can look at physical power, right, or coercion, in which we can force somebody to do something using physical power. We over here have resource power or economic power. I have a resource in which I can use to alter a decision. We also have persuasion or psychological or emotional power. So if we look at religion as a system of information, then religion is primarily a resource power or an economic power. But it doesn't operate independently. In other words, it has to be mixed with psychological power. Because the point of religion is that I've got to use that information to persuade myself, right, to overcome acts of selfishness and evil, but also use it maybe to persuade others. And so religion power or religious power is going to be primarily resource or economic power mixed with persuasion or psychological power as to overcome selfishness and evil. So if we go back to our decision model, we can see that religious power is going to operate through either event power, agenda power, or value power. It's not going to operate through control power because it's not coercing us, physically coercing us to make a decision or to change or alter our decisions. So it's not using it, right, as a type of force which is physically going to dominate us. We can give our control over to a religious system, but that's going to operate through one of the types of religious power. So the first type of religious power we can take a look at is going to be value power. And that primarily comes from a religious text or scripture. It appeals to the intellect. It's telling us what the right thing to do is. It's telling us what values I should have in my life, what values certain kinds of behaviors have in my life. And therefore it's going to persuade me through value power and appealing to my intellect. But I also can have different kinds of religious power. We could also have traditions or rituals. And here we have power that operates through the body, right? More of an embodied cognition. Right? This is operating through my behavior. It's giving me an experience that it's happening to me, and that experience is going to alter my decision making going forward. Again, that experience is going to be an event that happens. It could be a planned event, right, such as at a religious ceremony of some kind. It could also be a planned ritual that happens, but it also could be an ungranted event power, something that suddenly comes upon me unexpected, as well as ungranted. So it could be planned or unplanned, but that is an event that happens in the believer's life that's going to appeal through the body or through embodied cognition through that traditional or ritual event power. We can also take a look at operating through spiritual mediums. And again, we can look at spiritual mediums all across the board, We use in the West spiritual mediums, imams, pastors, priests. But we also could look at spiritual mediums in gurus for the Eastern religions, as well as we get to tribal religions or traditional religions, witch doctors. We could look at spiritual mediums that contact the dead. Those kinds of people who then operate and then tell us what to do or what not to do. So they're operating through agenda power. They can reinterpret events in our life. They can give us advice in terms of which way to go. They can tell us not to go in certain areas. Or they may even introduce a new way to go that we hadn't thought of before. And so those are the three ways in which religious power can operate. And you can see that they're matched up to the decision model. So traditions and rituals operate through event power, mediums operate through agenda power, and text and scripture primarily operate through value power. Now, however, it doesn't operate necessarily independently. They're not independent of each other. So, for example, I might go to a medium, and I might ask that medium what I should do. And again, that medium might tell me what not to do and use negative agenda power to say, don't do this, and take away an option for me. Or that medium may say, you should go ahead and do something that I haven't thought about, which is positive agenda power, and add a new branch to my decision tree. But that medium can also then redirect me to other sources of power. But my primary interaction is with the medium, and that medium either directs me to read something, which I can find value in it, or it may tell me to do something. And then therefore, right, that experience may then alter my decision-making process. And again, I can access religious power through one of these primary ways, which then may lead to other ways as that religion is going to operate. And so in the next video, we're going to take a look at how these three primary ways of religious power are going to change throughout history. So we're going to look at three distinct periods and how these types of religious power are going to change in terms of primary religious power throughout history.